Chapter 16. I blinked. I was standing in my bedroom. Dad filled the doorway. He squinted at me. "I heard you laughing all the way downstairs. What's so funny?" I shrugged. "Nothing," I said. "Just daydreaming." "Must have been a funny daydream," Dad said. "It was," I answered. "It was a very funny daydream, but too bad. Only a daydream." Dad waved and went back downstairs. I sat down on my bed and thought hard. I didn't know what I wanted to do to get my revenge on McClatchy. I didn't have any weird spell book. That was just something my crazy brain dreamed up. But I knew I had to do something. I'm going over there. Maybe I'll think of something good when I get there. I waited a while. I didn't want Mom or Dad to catch me. I knew I wasn't allowed out at night, but I had to risk it. I wouldn't be able to sleep if I didn't. So after a while, I crept down the stairs, careful not to make the steps squeak. I peeked into the living room. Dad had fallen asleep with a magazine on his lap. I didn't see Mom. I turned and tiptoed to the kitchen. Mr. Phineas was curled up under the breakfast table. He was sound asleep, snoring noisily. I slipped past him and stepped out the back door. I closed it, carefully, silently. I took a deep breath of the cool, crisp night air. My whole body tingled. I knew I was excited. My heart was thudding in my chest. This time, for real. I turned and, pressing against the wall along the side of the house, made my way to the street. I could see the tall hedge, and beyond it, the dark shape of McClatchy's house. What was I going to do there? What was I going to do to McClatchy? I still didn't know. I just knew I wanted to do something really bad. Chapter 17. I stopped at the hedge. My legs suddenly felt weak and rubbery. I was breathing noisily, my chest heaving up and down. I held my breath when I heard a flapping sound overhead. Beating wings? Was it a bat? A buzzard hawk? I pressed my back into the prickly hedge and waited for it to fly away. Then I turned toward McClatchy's house. Pitch black. Not a light on anywhere. The front yard stretched in shades of black and gray. I should have brought a flashlight. I can't see a thing. My sneakers scraped the driveway as I began to walk toward the house. I still had no idea what I planned to do. I'm not really a bad kid. Sure, I got in a lot of trouble in the old neighborhood, and today, but I don't try to be bad. I'm not evil or anything. But tonight I knew I was doing the right thing. This man had kicked my dog, kicked him really hard, and he deserved to be punished for it. Staring up at the dark house, I made my way step by step up the driveway, walking slowly, carefully. I didn't see the man standing in front of me until I bumped right into him. "Oh," I uttered a startled cry. "I'm sorry." He didn't speak. He didn't move at all. I didn't mean to bump you," I stammered. But then, in the pale light from a street lamp at the curb, I saw that it wasn't a man at all. It was a lawn gnome. How did it get in the middle of McClatchy's driveway? I squinted hard at it. The little man's eyes appeared to glow in the dim light. His pointed hat was tilted on his head. His mouth was turned down in an angry scowl. I glanced around. McClatchy had 2 lawn gnomes. I didn't see the other one. Maybe it was hidden in the blackness under the tall hedge. I put my hands on the gnome's hat and squeezed the top. To my surprise, the hat felt soft, not hard as plaster. Suddenly, I had an idea. I pulled a black marker from my jeans pocket. I had brought it along in case I found something to mark up. And now I had found it. This lawn gnome. I giggled to myself. I pulled the top off the marker. My plan was to paint the dude's white mustache, make it bigger and black, and make his eyes cross, and blacken a few of his front teeth. This would definitely make McClatchy angry. If I could find the other gnome, I'd mark him up too. Then maybe I could break off the gnome's stupid hats. I'd break off their pointy hats and leave them on the ground in front of them. That idea made me giggle again. If McClatchy wants to mess with my dog, it's only fair that I mess with his lawn gnomes. I raised the marker and moved it to the gnome's mustache. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," the gnome rasped. Its hand shot up and grabbed me by the throat. Chapter 18. I started to choke as a sharp pain swept down my neck. The gnome's fingers were bone hard. He tightened his grip, squeezing my throat. I couldn't breathe. I tried to squirm away, but he clamped his hand even tighter. He had amazing strength for such a little creature. I thrashed my arms, tried to punch him, but he held me out in front of him, choking me, choking me. His dark eyes glowed with excitement. His whole face was clenched tight from his effort to hold me in place. Please. I could feel my face grow hot. I struggled to hit him, but my arms felt weak. I was going limp. No air. No air. The pain was intense. I shut my eyes. To my surprise, the pain suddenly grew lighter. The gnome let go of me. I stumbled back and dropped to my knees. The lawn gnome stood over me, clenching and unclenching his fist. He, he, he. His mouth opened in a hoarse chuckle. It sounded like a chicken's cluck. Gasping for air, I tried to rub the pain from my throat. On my knees, we were about the same height. He chuckled again, his eyes catching the light from the street. How can this be? Lawn gnomes can't come to life. I knew it wasn't a dream. I was in too much pain to be dreaming. Rubbing his beard, the gnome moved toward me. Was he going to choke me again? I jumped to my feet, my mind whirring in panic. I spun away from him. I turned to run. But I bumped right into the other lawn gnome. He let out an ugly grunt and wrapped his hands around my waist. His hands were hard as steel. He grunted again and tried to lift me off the ground. Gripping me around the middle, he pressed his face against my arm as he struggled to raise me. His cheek was warm. It felt like human skin. His breath was sour and disgusting. He uttered grunt after grunt. Let go, I screamed. I brought both hands up and shoved him hard under his beard. It caught him by surprise. His hands fell away. I gave him another hard shove. It sent him toppling into his partner. They both made awkward grabs for me, but I dodged away, and then I ran faster than I'd ever run. My feet slid on McClatchy's lawn, and then pounded the driveway. I ran through the blackness of the night, not seeing anything, not thinking, just moving on fear and shock. I crossed the street, panting hard. I started up my front lawn. I could hear them behind me, chattering as they chased after me. I heard the clatter of their boots on the pavement, then the pounding of footsteps as they ran over the grass. I froze in panic, then forced myself to move. I leaped onto my front porch. If I could only get through the front door, into the house, I'd be safe. I grabbed the door handle, then screamed in horror. Chapter 19. 2 other lawn gnomes came charging at me from either side of the porch. They dove at me, lowering their shoulders, trying to tackle me around the knees. With a cry, I leaped back. They thudded hard against each other, cracking heads. Oh, no! I uttered a cry as I saw McClatchy's gnomes running up my front lawn, and 2 more gnomes from my other neighbor, and a whole bunch of them from down the street, all running, all grunting, all heading for me. Their pointed caps tilted toward me as they ran. Their hands were outstretched, ready to grab me. They chattered and whistled and cried out in language that I'd never heard before, like the chatter of birds. I spun away, started to the right. No, more gnomes coming in on me. With another cry, I spun to the left. No escape. No escape from them. I was trapped. They formed a circle around me, a dozen of them. No, more. The circle tightened. Chattering and whistling, the gnomes closed in on me. Get away, I screamed. Stay away from me, you little freaks. The gnomes ignored my screams. They tightened the circle till I could barely breathe. Then 2 lawn gnomes grabbed my arms and twisted them back. I couldn't move. For such little guys, they were incredibly strong. The gnomes from McClatchy's yard strode up to me. In the dim light, I saw that one of them held something behind his back. What is that? I stammered. What are you going to do? A cold smile spread over his face as he moved closer. His putrid breath floated over me. It almost made me gag. What is he hiding behind his back? What is he going to do to me? He giggled and raised his arm. He had the black marker in his hand. Stop, I cried. Let me go. But our porch gnomes held me in place, my arms tightly behind my back. McClatchy's gnome raised the marker and began to scrape it against my forehead. I could feel the lines he drew. I knew they formed an M. Why an M? What does that stand for? McClatchy? No, I guessed wrong. Malfunction, the gnome rasped in his scratchy, high voice. Malfunction, the gnomes all repeated. Malfunction, malfunction. They giggled and bumped each other's shoulders, like a gnome high five. What are you saying? I cried. Why are you saying that? They giggled some more and bumped shoulders. With a cry, I burst forward and broke free. I took off, running hard. I could hear them chattering like birds and giggling behind me. I glanced back. They weren't chasing after me. I hurled myself along the side of the house, turned at the back, and shoved open the kitchen door. Gasping, I bolted inside and slammed the door hard behind me. I pressed my back against the kitchen door and listened. I could hear them now. Were they still hanging out in my front yard? No way to tell. My heart was pounding. I took a deep breath and held it, but that didn't help. Drops of sweat rolled down my forehead. I pushed away from the door and strode quickly into the living room. Mom and Dad turned to me from the center of the room. They both squinted at me. "Jay, were you outside?" Dad demanded. "We thought you were in your room," Mom said. "You know you're not supposed to go out after dark." I know," I stammered, "but—" "I'm very disappointed in you," Dad said, shaking his head. "You promised you would follow the rules here, and instead—" "Lawn gnomes!" I cried. "Listen to me. You've got to hear what happened to me." They glanced at each other, then turned back to me. "What's that mark on your forehead?" Mom said. "It looks like an M." "Please," I begged, "listen to me. Outside there were lawn gnomes, dozens of them, and they came to life. Really. They chased me across the street, and they put this M on my forehead." They stared at me without moving or speaking. "I'm not making this up," I said breathlessly. "The lawn gnomes came to life. They grabbed me. They choked me. You've got to believe me. I saw them. Please, believe me." I stood there breathing hard. My heart pounded so fast. My chest hurt. "Of course we believe you," Dad said finally. "Of course the lawn gnomes came alive. Of course they chased you." "What did you expect?" Mom said. I stared at them both in disbelief. Am I losing my mind? Chapter 20. Mom and Dad refused to say another word about it. They said it was too late at night to talk. I begged them to explain, but they said it could wait till morning. They ordered me up to my room. The next morning I hurried down to breakfast so they could explain about the lawn gnomes. But Dad gave me a half-hour lecture instead. He was angry and upset. He hardly let me get a word in. "Jay, you promised," he said. "You know perfectly well that no one goes out at night. Yet you decided, for some reason—" "I had to go out," I started. "You're not supposed to break the rules, Jay, and the rule is to stay indoors at night. But you chose not to pay any attention to it." I lowered my head. "Yeah, you're right about that," I murmured. "But I had a good reason. Mr. McClatchy—" Dad frowned at me. "Jay, we talked about not causing trouble with the neighbors. You promised you would stop playing jokes on people." "But he kicked Mr. Phineas." "I don't care what Mr. McClatchy did," Dad said. "We are talking about you. Are you going to obey the rules here and stop getting into trouble?" He moved his face close to mine. I had no choice. "Yes," I said. "Yes, I promise, Dad. From now on, I'll be perfect." I meant it, too. I didn't have my fingers crossed or anything. I decided it might be a lot easier to be good, and it definitely would be easier to stay out of trouble. Dad took his coffee cup into the other room. I heard a cough. I turned and saw Elliot, the kid from the Quagmire, standing at the kitchen door. "Hey," I said. I felt embarrassed. How much did he hear? Did he hear Dad's whole lecture to me? "How's it going?" Elliot asked. "Did you get in trouble for losing your bike?" I shook my head. "No, I got in trouble for something else," I said. Maybe Elliot can tell me what's up with the lawn gnomes coming to life. "Come up to my room," I said. I led him upstairs. "Nice house," he said in a gruff voice. "It's okay," I replied. We stepped into my room. I had a lot of chemicals open and equipment strewn over my lab table. He glanced at it, then perched on the edge of my bed. He pushed back his black hair and gazed around. He looked bigger, wider, indoors than outdoors. Like, he was almost too big for my bed. He wasn't fat, just a big kid. I pulled my tall lab stool across from him and sat down on it. "Something weird happened to me last night," I said. "Maybe you can help me." He squinted at me. "Help you?" "I went over to McClatchy's house," I said. I pointed out the bedroom window. "And these lawn gnomes." His eyes went wide. "You went outside at night? Really?" "Well, yeah," I said. "And these lawn gnomes, they were alive. They grabbed me and—" He suddenly looked away. I could see pink circles on his cheeks. He was blushing. He mumbled something, but I couldn't hear him. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Do you know about the lawn gnomes coming alive? Tell me, you have to tell me." He shrugged his big shoulders. "You know," he muttered. He kept his eyes on the window. "No, really," I said. "I don't know. Tell me, how do the gnomes come alive? They're just hunks of painted plaster, right?" Elliot sighed. "Come on, Jay. You know the answer. Why are you doing this?" "I don't know the answer," I said. "I need you to tell me. They grabbed me, Elliot. It was totally scary. They took a marker and made a big M on my forehead." "Oh, wow," Elliot muttered. "They kept repeating this word, malfunction, malfunction. Do you know what that means?" He finally turned his eyes to me. "No," he said. "No? What does it mean?" "I'm asking you," I cried. "Why can't you help me? Listen, Mr. Phineas got free and caused a car crash, and the driver of the car kept saying the same word. Malfunction, malfunction. What does it mean? Why was he doing that?" "Beats me," Elliot said. He jumped to his feet and strode to the lab table. He gazed over the table and picked up a test tube. "You're into science?" I could see he wasn't going to help me. I followed him to the table. "I like to experiment with chemicals," I told him. "Create different mixtures and see how the chemicals react. And sometimes I come up with things. You know, inventions." He set the test tube down carefully. "Inventions?" I nodded. "I'll show you," I said. I pulled up the thing I'd been working on. I handed it to him. He rolled it around in his hand. "It's a candle." "It looks like a candle," I said. I took it back from him. "But I call it a light stick. See, you don't need a match to light it up." I treated it with chemicals. "You just blow on the end to light it, then blow once more to put it out." I raised the light stick between us, sucked in a deep breath, and blew on it. Quickly. I turned my eyes away. I knew how bright the flash would be. It made a fizz sound, and then a pop. A bright yellow flame exploded from the end of the stick. The flame surrounded both of us in bright light. Elliot's eyes bulged. He uttered a sharp cry and dropped to the floor with a groan. His head bounced on the floor. He lay sprawled on his back, eyes shut, not moving. I let out a startled gasp. Was it too bright for him? I blew out the light stick. Then I whirled around the side of the table and dropped to my knees beside him. "Oh, no! What have I done?" Chapter 21. "Elliot? Elliot!" I repeated his name. "What happened? Are you okay? Can you hear me?" He opened his eyes. A smile spread over his face. "Just joking," he said. He sat up. "Haha, you look totally freaked." I swallowed. My mouth was dry as cotton. "No way," I lied. "I knew you were faking. I knew it was a dumb joke." Elliot laughed some more. He climbed slowly to his feet. He looked kind of dizzy to me. His eyes were darting from side to side. Was it really a joke, or did the flash of light knock him out somehow? Weird. "Cool invention," Elliot said. He picked up the light stick and studied it. He raised it a few feet from his face and blew gently on it. "No, it only works once," I told him. "It burns off the chemicals, so it won't light anymore." He set it down on the table. "It's still totally cool. You made a lot of inventions like this?" "Well, yeah," I said. "Mostly I just mix chemicals together to see what will happen." He pushed back his hair and turned to the window. A beam of yellow sunlight poured onto the bedroom floor. "Jay, you want to go outside?" "Yeah," I said. I led the way downstairs. "Just going out for a walk," I called to my parents. We stepped out the front door. I felt a shiver of fear roll down my back. I searched the front yard for lawn gnomes, but I didn't see any. Across the street, McClatchy stood on a tall ladder with hedge clippers in his hands. He was busy trimming the tall hedge and didn't see us as we walked past on the street. I felt angry all over again. I pictured him kicking Mr. Phineas. I felt bad that I didn't get my revenge last night. Elliot and I turned the corner and kept walking. The sunlight felt good on my face. The warm air smelled fresh. I started to calm down. Elliot kicked a stone to the curb. "I kind of heard what you were talking about with your dad," he said. I kept my eyes straight ahead. "Really?" "Yeah, he sounded pretty steamed." "He can get a little stressed sometimes," I said. "He's been on my case a lot lately." Elliot stopped walking. We stood in the shade of an old fat tree. The tree limbs trembled above us in the wind, making the sunlight shimmer. "Why has he been on your case?" Elliot asked. "Do you want to tell me about it?" I swallowed. Well, I didn't want to talk about it. I never talked about it with anyone. Elliot's eyes locked on mine. He was waiting for my answer, and suddenly the words just blurted out of me. "I burned down our house." Chapter 22. Elliot's mouth dropped open. He started to talk but couldn't get the words out. I led the way over to the wide tree trunk and sat down on the grass. The grass was still wet from the morning dew, but I didn't care. I decided to tell Elliot the whole story. The whole ugly story. He sat down beside me, rested his back against the rough tree bark, and crossed his legs in front of him. "You're serious?" he said finally. "You really burned down your house?" I nodded. "No joke." "Jay, that's horrible. How did it happen?" I took a deep breath. My friend and I were in my room, just messing around. I had a lab table in my old room, too. And lots of chemicals and stuff. I've been interested in chemistry since I was 8. 4 years now. My chest felt fluttery. I could picture everything that happened so clearly. "I had just started working on the light stick, the thing I showed you," I said. "I wanted to show it off to my friend, but I didn't have it quite right yet. I mean, I didn't have the chemicals right. But I held it up and blew on it really hard, and it exploded. I mean, it made a huge blast, like a bomb or something. A big flame shot out of it, and I had to stop to catch my breath. Even though we were in the shade, sweat poured down my face. My chest felt like a bird was fluttering its wings inside it. The flame shot out onto my lab table. I continued. It set some chemicals on fire. The chemicals flamed up. With a roar, an incredible roar, the flames caught my bedroom curtains and my whole room was burning. My friend and I were coughing and choking on the black smoke. It was everywhere, all around us. We covered our faces with our shirt sleeves and we just ran out of the house. It burned. The whole house. It just burned black. My friend and I, we were okay. We weren't burned or anything, but I was in shock. I mean, really in shock. I just couldn't believe that I'd done anything so horrible. But there was our house, still smoking, the wood crackling, just a big black pile. A big black pile. My voice trembled. I pictured our house, everything we owned, burned, wrecked, ashes. "That's the story," I said finally. "That's what happened. I haven't told it to anyone, till now." He stared at me. He didn't reply. He scratched the side of his face. I could see he was thinking hard. "That's horrible," he said finally, in a soft whisper. "Just horrible. Jay, I don't know what to say. That's the worst thing I ever heard." "Oh, wait," I said. "It gets worse. A lot worse."